Okay, so all right, so
Oh,
we are live. So welcome to everybody that is watching this. It's been a while since we had this live chat. I think it's been like you guys probably don't know this, but it's been maybe 2 or 3 months that I haven't had any guests. You guys are the first guests for a while now. Yeah, like everybody in the comments as usual, please drop comments as we go along. We have Will, we have Henk, and the best thing is that these two guys here created this really cool book about UE5, and UE5 just came out, but this book is specifically for character animators, character modelers, rendering cinematics. It's really cool. And here on the live stream for the very first time, thanks to Will and Henk, we are going to give a few copies away to everybody that comments and drops a really cool comment. So without further ado, welcome Will, welcome Henk. Thanks for taking the time. Awesome to have you guys here.
thank you very much, man. Yeah, thank you for having us on the channel. I love your channel, by the way. I've been watching it through the months, and the last couple of weeks I've been watching even more of it. But it's a fantastic channel.
Thank you.
Kind of like a very holistic kind of like view of career and animation, and actually some of your tools you've been demoing. I'm using some of your tools now, so it's been very handy actually.
Useful.
Very nice.
Yeah. But like as I mentioned to you guys behind the scenes, like the idea here is genuinely to have like a chat. I know that both Henk and Will have lots of experience, and we'll talk about their book for sure in a little bit, and I'll share with you guys what their book is. But most importantly, I think we need to actually, as usual, go through their careers because they have like lots of experience, and it will be awesome to get started. Like either Will or Henk can give us like an introduction on what they do and how many years they've been doing, and a little bit of a shortcut into your career so far, if that's
okay. Do you want to go, Henk, or?
You can go first.
Cool. Yeah, me and Henk actually we've known each other for a very long time. From South Africa, we're both originally from South Africa. And we started in a city that literally just had one animation studio, Pretoria at the time, and I managed to get myself with my kind of like my first year of studying graphic design. I managed to get a job at a small animation studio that they just bought the first 3D studio, which was still running in DOS. And they used to have an animator that they started the business with, and this animator left. So they're in a mad scramble to get somebody to do animation for them. And they couldn't really they couldn't really find anybody, so they started advertising at the film school. And my girlfriend at the time, she was a student at the film school, and I was a graphic design student. So she told me about this job, and I immediately applied because I first studied a year art at Open Window Art Academy, and then they had computer aided, which is kind of like it was a fairly new thing to do, computer aided graphic design. So they had that for the second year. So I got into that because I liked that idea of combining computers and art. Yeah. And then I guess around the same time, the first Toy Story started coming out, and
we all remember.
I was just, this is what I want to do. I was just blown away by the first Toy Story. Sure. So this came around the same period. So I got this job there, and then Henk and his brother turned up one day, and they managed to see somewhere that there's one animation studio in Pretoria, and they came around and they just had to come and check this out. They can join and stuff. But unfortunately, at that point, it was just my boss, who was actually a management consultant that was kind of running the business. I was the only animator, and we had a secretary as well. So we were just doing like corporate video kind of animations, but very rudimentary. It was still in the days when, it was based on DOS, the 3D Studio, the first program I learned.
3D Studio Max.
It's not even Max, it's before Max.
3D Studio.
Yeah, it's literally, you typed in like DOS command codes and it will bring up the thing. You didn't have a shaded view. You had like wireframe, sort of like, it took like 20 minutes to render a sphere with a reflection on it. So they were trying to get into this new business. They were offering it to corporate clients and stuff to do animations, the new shiny kind of animations for them. And then I ended up then going back to the place I was studying after I kind of continued my studies. They offered me to finish my third year if I would come back to Open Window and then teach what I've learned at the studio, this new field of kind of like 3D animation, to come back to them and to help them to start the course. So I lectured there part-time in the evenings, and then I worked at the studio. In the meantime, me and Henk became good friends, and his brother and the whole group. Henk was really into 3D animation, brilliant artist, and he really wanted to get into the games industry in the UK. So at the time, we could do like a 2-year working visa. And Henk and one of our other friends, he decided, okay, no, they're gonna go. And then I started thinking of the back of my head, am I gonna do this well? And eventually, kind of like decided, no, this is it. If I want to further my career, I don't want to be doing logo builds for the rest of my life. Started looking into
I become repetitive.
And the other animation jobs in South Africa. I mean, even though I was doing animation job, I still had to have other part-time, other jobs as well, because it wasn't paying particularly well. But I mean, the studio was great. Poetic Pixels, my old boss' work was fantastic. But eventually I had to move on. So when Henk and our friend left for the UK, about 3 months later, I decided, okay, no, I'm going to go as well. So I arrived in England with about 500 quid in my pocket, and Henk had the couch for me to stay on. And then once I got to the UK, I discovered that all my skills were way too general for the games industry. Lucky, I kind of got like a bit of a part-time job at a television, Quid television, that happened to be also a South African. I just walked in from the street, and there was an African manager there, Nate, and he said, if you want to do some animation for us, we can probably find you some work. So I did a bit of work for them. But at the same time, I was just earning kind of like a commission of what the work they were bringing in. So I was waitering for about a year at the same time. And then I had to kind of completely rework my entire portfolio. And because it was way too general, I was like into everything, and I didn't have a slot that could fit me in for the games industry.
It happens still. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I spent about a year working on my demo reel again. I decided I want to do character animation. That's the first thing that I was like drawn to, because I'm kind of artistic, but I'm also quite technical. So it's kind of like a good fit for me. And I just worked solidly for a year to get my my demo reel together, waitering in the evenings. During the day I was doing like the 3 o'clock in the morning for like months, just like getting this demo reel done. And eventually a games company called Headfirst Productions, I sent my demo reel to them. They liked me. They hired me as a character animator. I was there for a year or two, and then they made me lead character animator until the company, probably for about 5 years, until the company unfortunately went bankrupt. And I went to Eurocom, where I met you.
Oh man! So that was basically the first bankrupt, but not the last one. Not the
last one. Yeah, and then after Eurocom, I worked there for a while, and after that, I went to TT Fusion, where I
Mm-hmm.
worked on a bunch of Lego games. For
Yeah.
animator, it was really fun. It's actually really fun, cartoony type animation,
Mm.
a lot of Anki animation. So it was really fun. Um, there, I became lead animator as well. At Eurocom, I was a lead animator for a while as well, and then
Yeah.
became lead animator there, and then we were planning a family, decided, okay, we're going to move out to Eastern Europe, to Bulgaria, buy a village house, do it up, and I'm going to see if I can make it as a freelancer. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And
For quite
working
a
for
few years now, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
well,
Which is
almost 9 years now. Yeah,
exactly, which is really, really cool. Like, it's funny though, because when you moved, because Will and I used to work together, at Eurocom, as you mentioned, and when you actually made the move, for me, it felt at that point in time, because I was so much into AAA, I was like, why? Like, it's interesting. You're just going to leave all this AAA goodness behind. But now, many years later, I understand exactly the peace and quiet that you were looking for after so many years, because you want that after a while, right?
yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. I
Yeah,
did my time. Was it nearly 20 years? A hard graft,
exactly.
lots of overtime. And
Yeah,
when you're starting a family, your priorities change. And actually, some of the best titles I've worked on since has been when I was a freelancer,
yeah,
but it was more on my own terms. I just came in, they got me in, I flew in, did a bunch of work, and then on to the next project. So it's been brilliant.
completely.
Yeah,
And you work your own hours and things like that, which is pretty
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
makes complete sense. Yeah, no, it's really, really cool. Will, maybe Hank, you can give us like the opposite version of where your career took you.
Yeah, sure. So Will gave us a good introduction to how we met. Um, I went to England and armed with my demo reel, um, I set off to get a job. And basically, the first job I got was a small studio in Birmingham called Artworld UK. Um, so
Art
I
World.
worked at Artworld.
Art World. That's a
Yeah,
bold name.
very tiny studio.
Yeah.
But they gave me a good start. I was a generalist. I worked as an animator, modeler,
Mm.
texture artist, environment artist, game designer, you name it. But
Right.
eventually, like Will, we realized we have to be a specialist.
Mm.
So I felt I was best at characters, and I started making a character specific demo.
Right.
Um, so basically, my first job as a character artist was at Eurocom.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but I was there before you, so I left in
Yeah.
2006.
Yeah, I started a few years later, 2009.
Okay,
Europe.
cool. Did you work with Andy and Gary Newman?
Andy, what was his surname?
Andy Wilson.
Andy
He
Wilson,
was,
yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. All
Yeah.
great artists.
Great artist, exactly. No, the Eurocom was full of talent, that's for sure. I
Yeah,
know that the crunch was horrible, but the talent was there, 100%. Like, it
yeah,
was
yeah,
really,
definitely.
yeah.
So what happened is I worked on Batman Begins.
Batman Begins, that's cool.
It was like for PlayStation 2 and
Mm-hmm.
Xbox.
Okay.
So the producer we had, Matt Sneap from EA,
Yeah.
he kind of poached me and my friend Maurizio, and he offered us a job in Montreal, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a job offer and I had to move within 2 weeks.
No pressure. No
So
pressure.
sell a car, rent a house,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
So Canada was great. I worked for EA in Canada, where eventually I worked my way up. But unfortunately, I decided it was too cold for me.
Yeah. That's
Very
exactly the
extreme,
conclusion.
yeah, extreme
The conclusion
winters.
that I got to in Sweden as well. That's why I came back.
So eventually, I decided, like, well, maybe Australia sounds great. It's like it's a
It's
bit like
completely,
South Africa. It's a bit warm, nice and warm, English
yeah.
speaking. So I moved to Australia for 5 years.
Oh wow, that's cool. So you stayed there for 5 years. Are you still in Australia now?
No.
Oh.
I stayed for 5 years working at THQ Studios,
Mm-hmm.
but THQ eventually closed down.
Oh yeah, of course. I remember.
And came back to the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, after a few more years in the UK, me and Will, we decided we want to escape the rat race of
Yep.
9 to 5. And at the time, we could get work, remote work. So it was a possibility to work from Bulgaria.
Right.
So we just went for it. And we drove all the way from Middle England all the way to Bulgaria with our computers.
That's really, really cool. So are you guys still there? Do you guys live close by? Like how? Yeah.
We're within 5 minutes of each other.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So
we're in the same small village. So
to Bulgaria, right?
Actually, Henk's brother that came by the first time, he's now with Henk as well. He also got a house in the village. So
in Bulgaria. I mean, I see some of the pictures that you post, Will, and it looks absolutely beautiful. Like it looks really like a really cool place to live. So awesome stuff. Yeah. And so obviously just so we can actually give a shout out to everybody in the comments, guys. Will and Henk, for everybody that is joining us now, Will and Henk wrote a book, and they've been mates for a long time. Book is for animators, character modelers, all UE5 based, and they talk about Nanite and Lumen and all kinds of good stuff that actually people want to know about. And this is why we're here talking. Now, I want to ask you guys on the comments to actually drop comments, because we can actually give away a few free copies. So definitely drop a comment. The best comment might actually get a copy. We'll get in touch with you guys. I've seen that James is here. James Lyons, he actually saying hello.
Hey,
How to animate.
Hello.
Come on.
Pretty cool. so yeah, it's good to see a few familiar faces, even though I haven't done this for a while. So I want to ask you guys about the book. So just so you guys know, I dropped a link in the comments so you guys can visit, and I'll probably put a link on the description as well. But how did you guys manage to actually kind of write a book based on all this stuff, on all this experience that you have? Because obviously it must have taken a while. How did the journey started? The book looks really interesting. I think that the content here is perfect for the audience that watches my channel. So how long did that took? How do you guys got the connections, and how do you guys got to this point?
Do you want to start the story, Henk? Or?
Yeah. So Pact, the publishing company, they reached out to me, and initially I thought it was going to be kind of like a book to show advanced students. But then they made it clear they wanted a book for beginners, which is a different ball game, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But me and Will, we've both been working in Unreal Engine for quite a few years.
Yep.
So for us, it was just natural progression to Unreal 5.
Of course.
And basically, we studied Unreal 5 and made tutorials and rewritten it until it became really easy to understand for beginners, and also for people who's already using Unreal 4 who wants to go over to Unreal 5.
Yeah, I think the whole process, what it take about a year, isn't it? It's almost a year.
A year. Okay.
Yeah, we started on the early access version.
Yeah.
And then the latest version has changed a fair bit, so we had to update the book again. We had to go through all the chapters, make sure everything works again. There's some stuff they fixed, some systems they completely ripped out, like the retargeting system for animation. But yeah, it was a lot of hard work. It's not full-time work. I would say, because we basically split the book in half. So Henk did the modeling, texturing, environments, the character, adjusting the character, And then
Yeah.
I did rigging animation, putting together your final scene, and all the kind of stuff at the last part of the book. So yeah, the first part is kind of I think even if you're an animator and you just want to know a little bit about modeling, how to do it in the right way, I think Henk did a really good job and just explaining the basics. And we try to explain the concepts, explain the concepts behind what we're doing as well. So it's not just you go through and you do stuff A, B, C, D. We try to explain why you're doing things, why it's important. It's just there's so much noise out there, but there's only, for character artists, for animators, there's only really a handful of tools that you use day to day. There's all these different things you can do in tutorials, and we try to boil it down to like the essentials, the things you need to get started.
Completely.
At that technical level,
Yeah. No, and I actually love the fact that you guys put it all in a book, because I don't know if maybe it's because I'm old, but having it all in one thing, like go through the pages and it's like, okay, so now my model is done. How can I rig my model? How can I animate my model? And how can I light the scene and things like that? Because I now that I'm actually like, not working in AAA anymore and all that stuff, I'm starting to kind of realize that the scene specifically right now with how easy UE5 is to use, there's a lot of like bedroom game developers that perhaps know how to model, but they don't know how to animate, or know how to animate, but they don't know how to model, or how to light a scene or anything like that. So having your experience after so many years of working in AAA games, it shows them how not to make the same mistakes. Right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's kind of like it started off being a beginner's guide, but it ended up kind of like being a foundation course in computer art, 3D computer art, because you go through most of the main sections of the art department in a games company, and because the real-time rendering seems to be taking over from in the old days where they used to do, sort of like render farms and stuff. Now it's all real-time rendering. So I think the game type Unreal Engine pipeline is not just for games anymore. It's becoming for everything now. So it's kind of like a shift.
Bigger than that, right?
Yeah,
exactly. And how easy was that shift for going from UE4 to UE5 for you guys? I know you have to go through the motions of getting like Epic to add things and take things away and learning them on the go, but is it actually quite a straightforward step, or is it like a little bit more complex than people think?
I think for sorry, yeah.
Oh no, go for it, yeah.
I think for movie making, it's a bit easier than for games. Because we mainly focusing on the new features like such MetaHuman, Nanite, and Lumen. So these are pretty easy to incorporate into a movie. But for game pipelines, it's a bit more involved to change.
That's interesting.
Because in games, you usually have to bake the lighting, where with Lumen you don't have to anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And for you as a character artist, Henk, how big, because you hear a lot of talks about, I'll ask about MetaHuman in a second, Will, but like for you, like how big is Lumen and Nanite for you in terms of being a character artist? Because actually, I'll tell a little bit more about my thoughts about it, but how
so it's absolutely amazing, but if you use Nanite, unfortunately you can't use it for deforming characters. So only static meshes right now. So all this amazing technology like unlimited polygons, but not on characters.
But on moving things.
Yeah. So you can make it on things like robots and droids, like mechanical, like imagine like a stone golem, like a skin of a golem.
Right.
Like something hard surface. You can have the nanite unlimited polygons on a nanite surface.
Okay.
But,
that's cool.
But Lumen makes a big difference for lighting.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like global illumination out of the box.
Yeah, it's for free, right? Like, here's the thing. I actually, and this is once again, maybe I've been doing this for too long, but there's a lot of free tools now that I feel like we've been struggling over the years to actually build them from scratch, like through coding and through whatever. So one of the things is definitely like, the whole Lyra system, the animation system that they added in terms of getting the motions in, or MetaHuman getting like amazing facials in high resolution and having different options. I'm pretty sure for you would have to actually craft a character from scratch to make sure that they are different enough and create differentiation within those. Now with MetaHuman, how do you feel? Do you feel like that is actually a blessing, or do you feel like that's going to make characters look kind of like similar from going forward?
I think it's a double-edged sword. It does make characters seem more similar, style. But we do have the tools to push MetaHuman to create unique-looking characters.
Okay.
So you can create your own hairstyles, your own clothes. You can even customize the face, the shape of the faces and the eyes, and so you can make it.
Right.
You can customize the style of it.
Yeah.
But I think if you for a lot of games, it's not the answer for all the games. Some games they want to be stylized.
Exactly. Yeah. Completely. And what about you, Will? How do you find the full animation in terms of the changes from UE4 and UE5? Do you find like there's a lot of differences?
Yeah, I think the big thing is I really got into the control rig because I mean, most of my Unreal experience is basically you do animation in Maya. You bring your animation, then your already edited animation into Unreal, and then you manage your animations. You create your blend shapes, you do all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I was working on a project where I was doing like all the animations for the main player character, and there's something like 30 weapons. So you manage the whole thing then in Unreal Engine. But if you were doing any changes, you take it out back to Maya, do your changes, bring it back into Unreal again.
Yeah.
So with this book, I really wanted to see if it's possible to move the entire pipeline, animation pipeline, into Unreal.
That's great.
Instead of going in and out of Maya. So that was my main thing. And to be honest, when I started writing the book, I wasn't sure if it's doable, but the book was my exploration to see if it's actually doable. Can you move the entire pipeline? And unfortunately, the only thing really that I couldn't move into Unreal Engine was the actual skinning of the character and creating the skeleton of the character. So I had to do that in Blender.
In Blender or Maya, I guess. Yeah.
So I did it in Blender because it's free-to-use software, and I had to. Because I usually use Maya to learn in Blender just how to do that process, do it in the best way, and then convey that in the book, because we wanted all the software in the book to be free, free to use.
Yeah.
The same principles you can take to anything, really.
Completely.
But in terms of the animation pipeline, it's actually really decent. Unreal Engine 5. It's actually really nice. Yeah.
So most of the people here will be animators. So how do you find like working, like actually creating animation from zero in Unreal with Control Rig? Do you find the graph editor useful? Do you find moving the controllers in Unreal as usually as Maya? How does that work for you?
Yeah. I think the graph editor, I love the Unreal Engine, the sequencer graph editor.
Yeah.
I actually really like it. I think it's for me, the Maya one, they keep on changing, like the way you select your keys, and then it's wider and then it's narrower, and the next release you have to find a way again to bring it back the way that you used to, and there's kind of like little finicky things in Maya. I mean, I work in the Maya graph editor so much that I know it so well, but actually, if I had to start new, I actually really loved working in the Unreal Engine graph editor. I think it's a really nice graph editor. It's got the same stuff. If you learn the Unreal on, you can transfer directly to Maya. Things are a bit easier to select. The only thing, the control rig is fantastic. To set up your basic rig is not actually that difficult. If you follow the steps in the book, it's to do a basic IKE, basic FK setups, combine everything together, do your stuff. It's actually easier to rig the basic stuff in Unreal Engine than it is in Maya. And the Maya, you need to know a lot more stuff. And I'm not an expert rigger, because it's not my speciality. But I've rigged a lot of characters in Maya, and I've had to, for some companies that don't have a rigger, then I would do the rigging. So I'm not really advanced rigger, but at the same time, I can do your standard rigs. And Unreal Engine, you just got to get used to the node system of doing things. But if you follow the steps, it's actually easier to set up a control rig. And once you got a control rig, the whole pipeline is really lovely to use in Unreal Engine 5.
That
and
is
I think between the early access, and because I didn't do a lot of animation before and Unreal Engine 4, the early access was all right, but there was lots of bugs. Unreal Engine 5, when that came out, they got rid of the bugs. They got all the important stuff in there. You can do your entire pipeline. So I in the book I cleaned up, I think five mocap animations entirely, the whole process, and all the stuff I would normally do. Yeah, in Unreal, I did the whole thing in Unreal.
So cool. See, Will, this is actually fascinating to me because it's something that I've been curious about, and since I've seen the control rig, because I also saw it in a UE4 before, and I was like, this is the future, 100%, because there's not a lot of back and forth, because you kind of want to live as much as possible within the engine. That's basically because at the end of the day, the game is within the engine, and you can add virtual joints, and you can add cloth and all kinds of stuff, and all simulates real time, right? So this is what engines do, and this is what they're good at. But having to go into an external software to then go into Unreal and then and this happens for artists and animators and stuff. So the control rig stuff, I thought it was actually further away from actually becoming reality, that the animators can stay in Maya. So what you're saying is basically like this can actually happen from now, pretty much. If you actually take the time and learn it, you can actually start animating and doing pretty much everything animation-wise in Unreal.
No, absolutely. And I think studios will probably move into that direction as well. I mean, the only thing, it's just a shame they haven't got a good skinning and just literally creating your skeletons and then doing a proper skinning on your character. That's the only thing that I didn't really find. I think there's some plugins, but they didn't look very good. They can do stuff like that in Unreal, but I'm not 100% sure. But it just seems like it's not there yet. But I barely scratched the surface of the control rig, but I can see how powerful this could be. You can bring all your automatic stuff and physics simulation, all kinds of programmer kind of like stuff you can actually bring into your character. You can do IK, FK switching in there as possible as well. The only thing is that because it's new, the documentation is not really out there yet. So, I mean, I'm learning the same as everybody else.
But why they have your book, right?
Oh yeah. But I mean, from the book, you can set up a human character. You can set up the robot character. Yeah, you can set up just about any rig. And even with the FK switching, it's a lot more complicated to set that up. So it's really beyond the scope of the book. But even though you don't actually really need it, because there's ways you can work around it in the pipeline, and the actual animation pipeline.
Completely. Like as Chloe just mentioned, it's crazy to think that maybe someday we don't need Maya anymore. And it's true though. It's like I think people don't realize how close we are from actually not needing Maya if you want to be a gameplay animator, which is kudos to Epic, really, because I think they understood. I kind of feel like they understand what animators need for gameplay animators, a little bit more than external packages maybe understand, right? Because
this is the amazing thing. So if you can create a control rig, now on Unreal Engine 5, they improved it again. So if you open up your control rig, it opens up automatically an animation outliner for you that you can select all your controllers. Like it just opens it up for you. And so you don't need an external selector or set it up or build that whole pipeline, in your rig and that whole thing. When you can create the control rig, it just opens up your outliner, so you can select your controllers really easy now.
Very easy. That's cool.
And then when you do layers, it just basically, the only downside, because you're doing it as additive animation is your equivalent of layers when you're cleaning up mocap.
Yeah.
So So there you just the only downside is you have to, when you create like an additive animation, they does it for your entire control rig. So you can't just do one arm or one thing. You have to do that layer on your
The whole
entire
thing.
rig, basically.
Yeah, it's not as granular as Maya, like when you do it in one controller only, right?
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that's coming, right?
Probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably, yeah.
So James is asking, how about FK IK stuff, Will? So I guess you already answered that, but like, feel free to actually say it again, please.
Yeah, it's probably worth expanding on it. So basically, you can set it up in Control Rig. I've seen people set it up. It's a bit more complicated process, but it's not overly complicated. It's not a terribly complicated thing. But the workaround is that you basically got your so on your MetaHuman, automatically you got IK and FK set up, and if you set up your rigs, you can set up both as well. It's just the switching, as you have to add some extra nodes, so it gets a little bit programming at the moment, to set that up. But it's not overly difficult, but you have to be a much more technical to set it up. So it's just beyond the scope of the book itself. But the way you work around it is you can do, for example, in the book I've got an example where a character is sitting and a hand is on a knee, and the knee has got like a really nice movement. So I wanted the hand to track the knee, but you can't really do it on your pole vector. You have to switch to FK, can bake it down to FK to be able to the hand to follow the FK controller, on your knee to get that motion across. So what you do then is you basically just bake your animation, basically bake it down to your main character, and when you bring your character back in, your control rack back in, and you connect it back up to your skeleton, then it basically bakes down both your FK and your IK. And then there you can switch to FK and IK, so you can branch off to any direction that you want.
So you can have both at the same time without having to kind of like readjust either or, right, as you go.
You don't. If you want to just set up a basic rig, you don't need to worry about the switching. You can just basically choose, okay, for this part now, I'm gonna just export my animation, bring it back in, bake it. It bakes it to both controllers, and then you can from there you can choose which one you want to switch on, and then use the one you want to use.
Exactly. And I think the best thing about this, and this is basically some of the stuff that I actually experience with Control Rig, is that because you can add animation logic to your animation setup in Unreal, you can start kind of creating all kinds of interesting setup with like foot sync markers and things like that, right? To make sure that things don't stretch and they adapt to opening a door or touching a table and things like that. Everything becomes much more natural when it comes to transitions between animations, right?
The actual default, when you create a MetaHuman, it creates a pretty good default rig. And I've seen people starting to create tools where you can create your own ones based on the MetaHuman humanoid rig. But that's got all the bells and whistles. It's really easy to animate. You can probably use that and swap out skins and stuff as well, but that's actually a really nice rig to use. Sorry, I was getting off screen. So it's actually a really nice, for animator rig, it's actually a really nice rig.
That's true.
There's one thing though with the only downside with animating an Unreal is it's probably just because I'm so used to Maya, but the selection of stuff in the viewport itself and the rotation of joints and objects, or your controllers. I find the Maya way of doing it slightly quicker. It just feels a little bit clunky when you rotate and move things in the actual Unreal Engine workspace.
Yeah, it needs to be like maybe because I think because it's a first iteration, I think eventually they'll probably hear the feedback and be like, we need it more like Maya. Because I'm guessing Blender went through the same journey, right? Because in the beginning it was kind of clunky, but now like people prefer the Blender way than the Maya blend because Maya way because now you have extra bells and whistles and things like that, right?
But saying that, if I so at the moment I'm on a contract and I'm using Maya, and most of the studios are still using Maya. But if I land a contract tomorrow and they tell me, listen, you're going to animate everything, and Unreal, I'll be fine. That's cool. Yeah, I don't mind at all.
Problem, right? It's incredible. I love that. I love that. So, like Chloe here had a really good comment that I'm just going to put up because she says like I never use Unreal personally, but it's really something I like to dive into. And where to start. This book sounds like a great start. So I'm definitely on to that because I myself get a lot of questions from a lot of people asking me about where can I learn Unreal, where can I get like more tips how to actually import things, especially from students. You get a lot of people asking you a lot about those things. So I think me pointing people to this book or where they can actually like if you want to model a little bit, go ahead and do it. If you actually want to animate, import animations, animate within Unreal is great. And the fact that you guys did it all for free, as in like use Blender is a free software, Unreal is a free software. Even the animations, the mocap, you use Mixamo, which is also free, right? So I think that's great.
Well, Pixel Mixer as well.
Quick Mixer for the texturing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which is really, really cool. So awesome comment, Chloe. And just so you guys know, we're actually giving away a few copies of the book. We're giving away 3 hard copies, right? Hardcover, and then about, is it 7 digital versions of the book?
Let me just it's 3 hard copies. If somebody is in the US, Canada, UK, Australia, or EU, it's just because of the delivery. But if they're outside those regions, there's 5 ebooks. So it's 3 printed books and 5 ebooks.
Yeah. So like once again, we're gonna like choose who to give it to based on the comments. Chloe, definitely awesome comment. We also have Daryl here. Ever6, like he actually, once again, I think he works mostly in VFX. I know him from the channel. He also wants to learn Unreal, and this actually brings me to actually a good question, which is like a lot of VFX artists, a lot of film artists want to get into Unreal because sometimes it's not even because of games. Sometimes they actually see TV series like The Mandalorian and they start to see back behind the scenes and they realize that actually you can do much more than games with an engine, right? So how do you guys feel that this book actually is appealing to those people? Is it more game specific centric, or is it more like for the beginner that just wants to get into like Unreal in general?
So the book is definitely a beginner book. But we got basically 2 audiences. So we made the book easy enough so kind of like a high school student can go and know nothing about the subject and go in and go through the process and learning all the basics, sort of the core of what you need. But it's also good for people who wants to transition from other software because it covers all the main things, all the things that's going to get you started, all the main tools, the main animation tools, the main, how to clean up mocap, how to retarget mocap, how to, do a basic control rig. It just basically each step it gets you started just enough so you can do a lot. But if you want to specialize in something, obviously you have to go and do some more research. But I think it's a very good kickstart. I mean, the book is quite long, 600 pages, but most of it's pictures.
It should be good for artists, so we like pictures. So
diagrams and pictures, so it's
exactly. I would also say that even though the book starts off with the basic principles of 3D, it dives into Blender right straight away, and then goes over to texture baking and how to do UV maps, those kind of stuff. And then gets into texturing, procedural texturing with the Quick Mixer. But only a quarter of the book is the how to create the assets. After this, the book focuses on Unreal Engine.
Yeah, I can see here building a virtual set, right, from part 2 onwards. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But unfortunately, Unreal doesn't have the sculpting tools or the modeling tools yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yet, until they decide to actually turn into that.
There's some experimental tools, but they're not that great for sculpting and for modeling.
Completely.
Yeah.
No, that's really cool.
One thing I want to mention about animation, that it's probably the animators will appreciate. So at the moment, when I want to animate in Maya, I've got an external snapper, sort of like that can snap forwards and backwards, that Mark Jackson made, and it's brilliant snapper. And I can't use it.
You can actually go between keys.
And you can go backwards as well.
Yeah. Backwards, forwards. I see the. I use it as well all the time since way back in the day in the Eurocom days. What is it called? I forgot. Yeah, I forgot the name. But yeah, I use it all the time as well.
Yeah, but anyway, so you need an external tool to do decent snapping, which Maya doesn't do it properly. Or the snapper is just, I can never figure out how the Maya snapper works properly. I start and I give up. Okay, I've got an external one. It's way better. I'm just going to.
Yeah, it's way better. Yeah, exactly.
So you got, so you need for motion capture cleanup and also animation, but you need a good snapper and you need layers. That's the two essential things. Yeah. And what's quite amazing is that Unreal Engine has got a really good snapper built in.
It does?
Easy to use. You can snap anything to anything. The early access was a little bit buggy, that if you snapped the left foot of your control rig on the human, it baked in a minus scale key. Right. But the latest release, they completely got rid of it. So the snapper is really easy to use, really easy to understand. It's got a pose saver built in, so you can save all your poses, really easy to use, and also really easy to just select the ones you want to. So you can set a separate pose, upper body and the arm, so you can save a separate arm pose very easily.
If you have a full body pose, you can then just paste the arm instead of pasting the full body, right? If you select the arm.
Exactly, yeah. So very flexible, very easy to use. And even like the pose sim, normally you have like an external tool to save your poses in Maya. So Unreal Engine, they definitely listen to the animators. And if they keep on going in this direction, because those are the things, you need a good pose saver, you need good layers, you need a good snapper, to bring stuff in the hand, line up guns with, hands, all that stuff that you normally do. But yeah, so I'm in the beginning I said like we're doing a movie pipeline, but it's basically a game pipeline at this point as well.
Okay.
So basically, I think that's blurred now completely. You can do a game pipeline, and you can do movies, or you can do.
Or you can do a game or a movie, because I guess you need geometry, you need a camera, you need characters moving around, and all of those things apply to both mediums, right? As you actually are doing it. Completely.
And so the art pipeline is not really that different. So but anyway, cool.
So one thought is that the reason we're doing all this in Unreal, making movies in Unreal. The biggest benefit of Unreal is the rendering speed. It's because it's like near real time.
That's it.
You don't have to render anything. Like anybody who's ever rendered anything, it takes a lot of time.
Completely.
Wait for renderings and to test your render to see the animation.
Yeah, and there's something special about, and this is why I love to work in games, because there's something special about seeing everything like as it's going to be final as you build it up, right? Because that's what Unreal gives you. Like in Maya, everything's gray in the beginning, right? Until somebody actually the character, and nothing. There's no physics anywhere, because otherwise your computer dies. And then you have to wait until you put it in Unreal to see how it is, and then you have to start the process again. But just to see like an environment being lit up so easily, and a character just on your environment, and a cape flying by as you actually make another animation, and how does the cape like now react to your punching animation that you just added now in Unreal. I think having this real-time feedback is so cool. Plus, we've been using Playblast for how many years, Will? Now,
Oh,
you can even press play and actually see it real time in Maya, right?
yeah.
So having that by default in Unreal is like a blessing. It's so cool.
Yeah, that's actually something I did. I did all the animation cleanup for the book, and not once had to render a preview, and that's
right. That happens
that's
once. Amazing. I think we lost Hank. Maybe he'll come back. But there's a question here for you, actually, by AJ. What version of Blender did you use? Or does that matter?
Got to remember now. It's I updated it. We double checked everything again and updated to the latest version. So whatever the latest is, it like 5 or 6 now? It doesn't particularly matter. I think the latest version, the book is definitely based on the latest version that's out now. So we basically like a couple of months ago, we went through everything again and made sure everything works. And
everything still works, of course.
Yeah, it doesn't matter too much. I think there was one improvement that I can't remember exactly now. A small change from the old Blender to this Blender, but we updated it in the book as well. So it's better to be on the latest version, but it's like something small. But older versions of Blender should be fine as well.
Perfect. And Michael has another question here. Michael Skivel, how do constraints work in Unreal? Does Unreal have motion path?
Yes, there was an option to turn up motion paths. I didn't use it much in my cleanup. So I demonstrate how to do animation on the robot, like a hand keyed one.
Yeah.
There is some motion paths. I didn't use it much. I know you can switch it on. At one point, I think it switched on automatically. When I was doing the robot and doing the main one, but I can't remember. I think it's maybe if you go into the graph editor of one of them that it switches on. So there is something there. And then constraints. You can either set that up in your rig, or you can use, if you do like a pre-canned sequence, you can use the snapper tool instead of worrying about constraints. So I just use the snapper tool.
Snap one project to the other and just keep it there, and it follows through.
Yeah. And then basically you can switch your constraint whenever you want as well if you use the snapper tool instead. Generally, even in Maya, I try to keep it quite simple. Try to not mess around with constraints too much, and rather use snapper tools to get the results I want.
Likewise. It's funny though, in the beginning you do all these constraints and you look for ways to use your constraints the best you can, and then I think the longer you actually animate for, the more you actually start letting go of those things and be like, I'm just want to do the basic bit because I know it works independently of where I work.
Yeah, and the thing I found with constraints is, like, if I do animation now, I come back in 3 months and I thought, how did I constrain this? How do I work out what's going on here? How do I edit this animation I did a week ago? I can't remember how I did the constraints. And if you just use the snapper tool, you've got none of those problems.
Completely. Or even worse, if another animator picks it up after you, like if you leave the job, or that like no one can do it except for another animator, and the first thing that you do when you pick up another scene is like, oh my god, there's all kinds of constraints, animation layers, it's a mess. It's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, even at Eurocom, when I was lead there, I told my animators that, listen, if you finish that animation, bake everything down.
Bake everything down.
If you set up any constraints, or bake it all down, because another animator is going to clean this up later, and he's going to be confused to hell.
100%. Nothing worse than that, because then you have to like rework or like find out how things were made before you can start animating. No, it's really cool. There's actually another one. Hendrik says I can relate. I'm pretty sure most people in the industry do. Also, another one for animators again. Like, does Unreal have an annotation tool like Blue Pencil? I think Blue Pencil was just added to this latest Maya. It's like
is it a bit like Grease Pencil?
Grease pencil, yeah.
It's better. So they had a grease pencil before, which was very basic, but now they actually have I think Zurbrigg, Chris Zurbrigg had something called Blue Pencil, so they integrated that with the Maya itself. So now it's native within Maya. Looks really good. It works really nice. It's actually a good tool.
That's really handy if you're doing instruction for students and stuff as well. To have something like. I don't know if Unreal has it. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody developed something like that for it, but I don't know.
Exactly. But that's actually a good point though, because people that work in Maya are used to plugins, scripts, things that we actually add on top, right? So, like, did you guys cover this in the book? Do you guys go through it in the book, or is it like vanilla Unreal? And if you haven't, then maybe you can explain a little bit about what can be done on top of Unreal when you don't have the tools.
Yeah, so it's vanilla Unreal. So everything in the book comes as standard. I think in the only thing you needed to do in the early access version, you had to switch control rig on, and also Meta Human. You had to switch it on, but in the latest version, you don't even need to do that. So basically, you don't need to add anything to Blender, to Unreal Engine, no extra plugins, nothing like that. Yeah.
Perfect. That is cool. That is really cool. Yeah, and I'm guessing if you do want to add anything, you need to be a little bit more of a coder, programmer, in order to be able to add those things, or is it easy to add anything on top of Unreal if you need to?
I mean, it seems to be fairly simple. I think it's easier than Maya anyway, to add stuff. I mean, adding art resources is fairly simple. I didn't really have the need to add a lot of complex things to Unreal. If we added stuff to Unreal, it was normally at a studio that I worked at, and they had some specialized tool that they integrated.
Exactly. Yeah, that's my experience as well, completely. And here's another one from Henrik. Good question as well. Does the book cover camera sequencing, switching from first shot, from one camera to another, I guess? Yeah,
it does. Yeah. So you do your final sequence, and then I teach how to do like a camera track, switching to different cameras, animating the cameras, setting up your scene in the background with your characters all together in the same scene. So all the camera stuff is covered.
Yeah, I think I've seen it here. I think the sequencer. Yeah, exactly. Part 4, which is really cool.
I think it's the last chapter we go through. I think it's chapter 20 is using sequencer to put your basically everything you create in the book and the final scene, you put it all together then in the scene. So you create your robot, you create you sculpt like an alien plant, and all the things you then all strings together, and you make a movie towards the end of it.
How cool is that? It's so cool. I'm excited. I'm excited to actually try it myself. So it's gonna be great.
I mean, I was going through Henk's chapters, and I'm actually waiting for a moment that I can sit down and go through Henk's chapters, because I want to know more about the procedural texturing and the methods he's used, and actually how to model stuff properly. I actually just want to go through it properly and have time and actually work through it myself.
Completely.
So one thing I want to say is, even though we focused on open source software, if you used to use ZBrush or Maya or any of these tools or Substance Painter, you can use your own tools and create the same asset and then put them in Unreal the same way, and then go from there.
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes good sense. It's probably better.
Yeah. And also these tools translate. For example, if you learn Blender, the same tools used in Blender basically translates to Maya.
Yeah, but the buttons are in different places, but it's basically the same thing.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I think it's actually if you started off in Maya, it's a fairly easy transition into Unreal Engine, the sequencer, and the graph editor. But even if you start in Blender, you'll transition very easily as an animator. Transition very easily to Maya as well, because the graph editor is just so similar. Sort of almost in the same place as the buttons even, it's almost like they copied Maya,
Yeah, almost. So, but it's actually really good, at least, because I think it showcases that Epic is looking at what is the default thing in the area that people are doing. So, for example, animation. What are the animator graph editor that they like the
Yeah.
most? And obviously Maya is the default. Everybody knows this, so it makes sense because obviously I worked in 3D Max way back in the day, and everybody knows that the Maya, the graph editor, is way better. So yeah, it's really cool that they're doing that.
Yeah,
cool.
I must say I felt loved as an animator, and the Unreal Engine 5, especially with the latest release coming out, the full release, the little things that they fixed. I felt, okay, yeah, they've got somebody who knows animation who's making these decisions.
That's making these decisions. That is pretty cool. So, by the way, we have about 117 people on the channel. So obviously your book is actually very interesting to a lot of people. Just as a reminder, before I put the next question up, guys, we are giving away some copies of this book. So add your comments. We'll select from the best comments to actually give away some hard copies and also some digital copies. So far it's been a really pleasurable conversation with Will and Hank about their book and Unreal and learning new things. I'm learning a lot of stuff here as well, so definitely kind of keep it up, keep the comments coming as we go along. We have a question by Captivating Studios that I think that is quite big, but I think is very relevant given the fact that you guys have so much experience in the industry. I'll pitch in here as well, but he's asking, do studios value gameplay animators well, junior animators specifically, trying to get into the industry? Do they want to be at a certain level? I'm a gameplay animator trying to break into the industry. I've been doing a lot of my own animations in engines, so I was curious. Thanks. So I'm assuming, Captivating, that just like Will, you've been doing the animations in Control Rig, which is actually an interesting thing. Well, there's people out there doing what you've done. It's news to me, which is actually really cool. So what do you think, Will, given the fact that you're an animator?
Yeah, all I can say, so gameplay animators definitely very valued. There seemed to be a lot of demand at the moment. I think after COVID as well, people are much more happy to give remote work. They tend to want people with a bit of experience, but there's also a lot of smaller, medium-sized companies that that are actually looking. They start creating a game and they realize, okay, we can't just use libraries. Sort of we have to get a gameplay animator in, to be able to, for the guns to work, for for our specific pace of gameplay to work, to edit the animations, so they write. So yeah, I think there's gameplay animators. I just know as lots of people need them, need them to finish their projects. So from personal experience, that definitely is very much valued. Especially if you. It's always hard when you're trying to break into the industry. So yeah, it took me more than a year to get into games. Sort of you have to you have to show them a base level of skill. You need to show them a base level of competence animating, and this is what a channel like Harvey's is very good, because it teaches you the meat and the bones of becoming a good animator. But yeah, it's definitely. I think most of my work is actually to do with gameplay animation. The last sort of 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, there's always demand. 100%. Yeah. No, so I can pitch in. I actually think exactly like what Will said. It makes 100% sense, and it's actually making more sense the more we actually make games, especially now with this metaverse and this content coming through, that everybody's going to make content going forward and all that stuff. The most difficult type of content, and sorry, Hank, but the most normally complicated type of content to add into games, and the one that takes more time, is normally animations. right? Is the one that actually people like, even within the studio and developers, they're always wondering, especially directors, is like, why are you guys taking so long animating, right? And it's always the thing about these things take time. You have to make the animations, you have to make the transitions, you have to build the logic, you have to go back and change things again and stuff. So if you are a gameplay animator and you're trying already to actually put your animations in game, the fact that you understand logic, the fact that you actually understand animation, as long as you have a good story wheel, I think there's always going to be demand for us out there. So it's a thriving industry. Especially now.
And especially in a smaller studio, if you're a way to get in maybe is to go for a tech animator role as well, or somebody who can mix being a tech animator and an animator. So if you can do decent animations and you can implement animations and understand the engine, so it's easier for the coders, then that would be a good combination for the smaller studios. Yeah,
exactly. It's a good place to start as well, because that's another thing that people just wait to get that AAA studio break and to work on a AAA big game. But there's so many studios up and coming now that, like, if you start anywhere, and I think both Hank and Will are examples of this, just start anywhere and then work your way through the industry so you can find your way to the dream place, right?
And sometimes, sometimes working for an indie studio could be more fun, less stress, just like more social sometimes.
Completely. You get more freedom as well to create more stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the two fairly long contracts for sort of like small, medium-sized studios, and they had the funding. It's just they didn't really have the experience, and that was actually two of the most fun because two of the most fun projects, just because you got so much creative freedom. You know, sort of like one of them was lucky that I had a very good. The manager had a very good eye for animation as well, so it kind of like kept me on my toes as well. You know, sort of like things I missed, they would pick up, and we feed back on each other, and that's like a really good situation. And they were very open to me making suggestions, you know, and changing things and saying, oh, this doesn't quite feel right, and then we would change things. So it's actually it's a very good place to start, and you have to start somewhere. You know, don't go for AAA first. You know, it's
very rare for you to actually get a job straight away in AAA. I know I didn't get a job in AAA straight away. I mean, I don't know if Eurocom was considered AAA back then, but I doubt it.
Yeah, not the movie titles they did anyway. They did a few good ones, but yeah.
Actually, like James here has a good question, right? How to animate. By the way, if you guys want to actually follow a good YouTube channel that focuses on animation, definitely go and check How to Animate, because James is really good at YouTube and creating videos and tutorials, and very talented.
I got to second that. Yeah, James is a great dude. Yeah,
great dude. We used to work together as well. But yeah, good tech animators are unicorns. This is true, 100%. And if you actually want to be even more, like, animation is already difficult, like, to crack. And when you do, there's only a few of us around. But tech animators are even more rare to find, right? Coders and tech animators are normally the most difficult, like, roles to get, and normally they get paid quite well. So definitely a good position for you to work. But my question for you, Will, normally tech animators serve, well, they can either rig and implement, or they can just implement and create logic and stuff like that. I'm thinking, and I would like to get you for your thoughts on this. If people in the future, let's say 10, 20 years from now, if we're going to live in Unreal, if we're going to add animations in Unreal, most likely we're going to tinker with logic and things like that. Do you reckon the role of tech animator is going to go away, and the gameplay animator is going to become a tech and gameplay at the same time?
The thing is, the better the tech gets, the deeper the tech goes as well. I guess if it gets easier to add things, maybe some of that role goes away. But I think it's a constraint of time. In the end of the day, if you got to do all the gameplay animations, edit all the stuff so all the hands fit perfectly on the gun, and your jump is just perfect over this particular wall, or this particular height you need to do. That takes a lot of time. So I think you still need somebody to implement who's skilled, who can actually specialize, do that particular job. So I think at bigger studios, don't know, anytime soon, unless it becomes ridiculously simple to start adding this stuff, and it takes like no time at all. But even just importing animations and lining them up and all this stuff, it just takes a hell of a lot of time. So I reckon if you got 4 or 5 animators, you need one tech animator just to implement.
100%. 100%. No, I second that. So that question was not a trick question anyways, but I second that mainly because you normally need somebody to speak with code. To actually, right? And animators and code is like opposites. It's difficult for us to communicate because very artistic and very deep into the game. But normally a good tech animator can actually translate what the animators can want to do and how you want to get to the bottom of like the logic and stuff. And then we need code to basically unlock different features, especially if you want to do something very unique. So normally tech animators become a gate for them to actually speak with code while you focus on your pretty animations. I personally hope they never go away.
No, I'm very reliant. So when I was at TT Fusion, I had a really good tech animator. And we were basically like peas in a pod, we such a good team together, because 100%. I could rely on him to get the stuff in. He knew all the technical side. He could fix stuff. He was absolutely brilliant, and it made my job as lead so much easier because at previous companies I had to work with the programmers as well as lead. You kind of like you are that bridge, but it just takes so much of your time, and it's kind of difficult. And it's all right, but it just takes a lot of time. But if you have that good tech animator to have that role, like everything, I could just put so much more into the creative side of the quality of the animation and the team and looking after my team when I had the good tech animator.
Completely. And normally they're the first sport, right? At least for me, like whenever I'm actually kind of thinking, okay, we want to actually make a bike in space that actually shoots lasers out of the front or whatever. And we want to ride them with 3 people on top. The first person that I go and ask is like the tech animator. Do you think this is possible? Is this too crazy? Do you think code will like this idea? That's kind of how it goes. If he actually goes, yes, I think so before these reasons. And if you actually do these things, we can do it. And then at that point, we maybe actually kind of like upscale the conversation to make sure that we actually, how can we make this happen, right?
I think if there's somebody out there wondering about a career and you find yourself that you're kind of like 70% technical and 30% artistic.
Yep.
And you love animation, you've got an eye for animation, but you find you're struggling a bit, but you find the tech side really fascinating. It really, you love that part of the job. You're probably a tech animator.
You're probably a tech animator. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually a very, very important role in the industry.
It is. It's highly underrated as well. People don't know what a technical animator does. And even studios, like a lot of studios, and I've worked in studios that way that actually call animators, but they end up being actually technical animators because they expect all animators to implement great logic, all these other things in engine, right? So but no, it's it's been a pleasure talking to you guys. I know it's been over an hour, and I know that you are all busy and we have to do other things, but it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Will and Hank. Like really, really cool. Thanks a lot for the questions, guys. Really good questions. Nice chat as well. So we'll go ahead and actually kind of like contact some of you to actually kind of like give some books away based on the comments. Drop a comment also down below on the video on the chat if you actually want to make sure that you get your book, or if you're interested in the book, to make sure that we don't lose you through the interwebs. Awesome to have you here, Will and Hank.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for having us on, man. Yeah, it's just been nice chatting again.
I know. It's been like 15 years or something like that. It's really cool.
So it's just been nice chatting, and thank you very much for giving a shout out for the book.
No problem.
It's really rewarding to see people getting something out of the book. So thank you very much for that.
No problem. Go and get it. Unreal Engine 5 character creation animation cinematics. Go and search for it. Go and get it. We'll definitely give a few copies away here. Keep an eye out for more. And until next time, see you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, man.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.